Lauren Johnson, welcome to Lingofest.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you bet. Thank you so much for making the time. I think what we have to talk about is important. And I think many people don't understand how important it is. My goal really is to speak with someone who is living this problem every single day, and who is in contact with other folks who are living this problem every single day. So the hope here in this conversation is to sort of elevate the consciousness of the audience. We're not here to convince as such. We're here to communicate and get folks to have enough information, I think, to make up their mind as far as where they stand. Anyway, I just wanted to give that as a sort of a background for the folks who are listening. I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to ask you the basic question of what is the problem here? And the follow-up would be, what's the big deal?
So the problem is that Amazon and other companies as well have chosen human, in this case, female names for AI technology. I personally, and I think many of the people who are in this organization would say the same thing, would not have thought of it, nor would I have thought this was a big deal if I didn't have a daughter named Alexa. It's something I experienced firsthand watching my daughter. This began because I watched my daughter getting bullied, not just by her peers, but by complete strangers. And so, that's when sort of the light bulb goes off and you realize, okay, this is different. This isn't like Benjamin Button and my name is Ben and I'm getting teased in one direction by my peers or, siblings or something. But Ben's not in every single household, car, everywhere in, I would say, America, but I suppose the world. So that's, where the problem really starts. And I'm sorry, what what else did you ask me for a follow-up?
The follow-up is, what is the big deal? But before we go there,
Sure.
I just want to dig deeper here, because I think you said they get bullied, right? And so, okay, everybody, of course, is against bullying, and everybody is against bullies, and bullies are, a tiny minority in a classroom amongst friends. So the image that maybe people have in their mind is, in a classroom, there is one person who is misbehaving, who's being a bully. When I think, in fact, what's happening is just, nice kids, right? Not necessarily bullying, but just, being playful and being teasing and so forth. And so I think I've seen Amazon latch onto the "we are against bullies," okay? And I don't think this is necessarily a problem of just bullies doing their thing. I think it's a problem of kids, having this opportunity to be playful, but playful in a hurtful way that they don't probably know. I just wanted to not clarify, but sort of just, I've been thinking about this myself, and I thought maybe we could make sure that people don't think this is like secluded or a confined problem to bad kids.
Right, exactly. Because, I mentioned this story before, but, we thought, as my husband and I thought, that this was just kids on the bus saying, Alexa bark, Alexa do my homework, Alexa do this. And we thought, okay, we'll get through it. We're not saying anything to the teacher, to anything. We're just going to let her build the skills and get through this. And when we, fast forward 6 months later, you're in a restaurant and a complete stranger, a server, comes up and starts making fun of your child, who doesn't mean any harm. This person isn't doing this to be rude or to be mean. Or, I told this story last Christmas. My daughter was donating gifts to a homeless shelter, and the person in the homeless shelter who worked there, a volunteer, couldn't have been a nicer person on earth, was also making fun of her, but didn't realize it and was pressing questions. And so it's just, it's general public. But I also realized through this that bullying really isn't the issue. It's really not. So that's where I realized it. But then fast forward a little while, and I start talking to other people, and I put a website together, and I realized that unfortunately there are kids where the bullying has gotten so bad that we have two cases where these teenagers develop suicidal ideation over this. And I think for the women that are involved, their name is Alexa, and it's more of a name bombardment. And even those who have chosen to legally change their name, I don't fully understand this, nor am I going to pretend to, but I know that, there are studies basically looking at the brain and what happens to your brain when you hear your name, regardless of whether you're changed it or not. I mean, they've even studied it in patients who are in a vegetative state. And there's still brain waves that move because you learn that when you're an infant, right? So even if someone says, well, change your name, go by your middle name, you can't shut that off. It's impossible. It's simple science. You can't shut that off. And for a lot of people, that's what's happened. We have, I've talked to a lot of moms and on my podcast as well that have decided to change their names of their toddlers or their teenagers. And well, the moms, I wouldn't say that, the entire family's involved, but yeah, it's really tricky, and it goes so far beyond bullying into something that's really, in our opinion, an unethical practice and something that could be remedied.
Yeah, exactly. Now, what's interesting is the following. As you were talking, I was thinking about the nice lady. She's a volunteer. Clearly, she has an elevated moral standard, right? She thinks about right and wrong, and she wants to be a good person and so forth. And she was inadvertently made to hurt someone, right? She was inadvertently made to behave in a way that violates her ethical self-perception. She sees herself as a good person, and all of a sudden she was made to behave as a bad person unintentionally in her, right? And so maybe she feels guilty after she finds that out. So in other words, not only is the kid hurt, obviously, but the well-meaning person may feel bad once they realize that they've hurt the kid. And so there's badness happening here in many ways. Okay, so I think we've established that there's something wrong happening, number one. Number two, that actually it is unique in the history of humanity, really, to be honest with you, right? There has never been a machine that it's in the homes of tens or maybe hundreds of millions of people across the world that has the name of a person. Okay, and that name of that person is not a fringe name. I think Siri is a fringe name, to be honest with you. I've never met somebody called Siri, although there are out there, and I don't want to minimize that. But in terms of magnitude, clearly a lot more. Like how many? There are 300,000 Alexas alive today in the United States only, something like that.
Yes, there are 130,000 in the U.S.
In the U.S.,
right?
Yeah.
But and if you add the other names that trigger it, so like Alyssa, Alexis, Alex,
right.
you're in the
so
millions. Easy.
You're in the millions, right? Yeah, exactly. And so when I've seen folks say, well, there's Siri, it's an assistant, it's the name of a human being, therefore, why are you raising this issue? What's the difference between you and Siri? And I think the answer is pretty obvious, right? even though we don't want to. I mean, the number one, it is right. It is not as prevalent. Number two, people don't say "Hey Siri." They use their smartphone and they, maybe they click or they say it themselves and so forth, right? So it's definitely not the same problem. Now, so that's that, right? Number two is what's the big deal, right? So it is a problem, and there are some problems.
Formed a formal organization, the I Am Alexa Alliance, and so I Am Alexa as an organization, our first project, I guess
I'm
you
sorry,
call it.
Lauren. Sorry. Yeah, I think we miscommunicated there. I was asking, and then you, right? So we're gonna cut this thing, this part off, right? I think it's probably an issue from my end. So so let me just say that you were answering. What were you answering? I'm sorry.
I was going to answer Siri versus Alexa.
Okay. All right. So why don't you go ahead and do that, and then I will edit correctly. Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. So I was going to say, so we formed an organization called I Am Alexa, and what we realized is that and I want to preface this by saying that we support AI and we support the technology. This certainly isn't any sort of campaign against that. It's just without the use of human names. And so Alexa will, of course, be our first project because so many of us are affected by it firsthand. But you know, if we can accomplish this and if we can accomplish anything else, I will support anyone. You know, if we can do something for the series out there, if it affects them as well, then we're all happy to support that as well. But I think, you know, it's more of a general, like, this should have been a little bit more well thought out from these large corporations, and it's just more of a question of ethics and how do we change these giant brands.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So I guess my next question is, okay, we agree it's a problem, right? And there are many problems in this world. But why do you feel that it's a big problem or it's a serious problem? And then we get to what is the solution, or what is your ask of Amazon and in general of the community who's delivering these bots?
So that's humans in general. It's a big deal, right? So if you're causing a kid to have major anxiety, or you're causing an adult to have major anxiety, or to be experience sexual harassment at work, which in this case we have seen, or harassment in general in the workplace, it's a big deal. So I guess the message to that, this is from what I found in my research, and I talked to a few people that work in coding, and from a coding perspective, it's doable, right? It's something that could be changed. I think the larger issue is, how do we get companies like Amazon to really see that the risk outweighs the benefit, right? So how do we get people who work for Amazon or for companies that use their products and technology to rebrand and see that it is worth spending the money to rebrand, and it's worth the project, because this is truly hurting many people to the point of legal name changes and suicidal ideation. So it is a big deal. And I don't think that, you know, people have said, okay, well, here's a fix. You can change it. Yes, you can change the wake word, but I'd say, first of all, most people don't. Second of all, there are over 700 devices where Alexa is built in and you can't change, right? That's part of the contract that people, third parties. And even if they do, most people will just take whatever the default is. You know, if it were me and I opened something out of the package, not being in the field, I would probably just open it up and use whatever the default was.
Yeah.
So you can't fault people for that, right? So, you know, the ask is essentially to remove the default and choose something that's a non-human name. It's, in my mind, it's a simple fix, realizing that it's a very expensive and time-consuming fix, but it seems to me from a human level very simple.
Yeah. So for me, when somebody starts to argue, because I sympathize with you, so I just want to make sure that that's on the record. When somebody starts to say things like, you know, what's the big deal and all that, I would say to them, imagine a company that had launched a toy, right? A toy that could hurt 130,000 kids out there, or a car manufacturer who had a defect in their car that could cause 130,000 cars, to do something bad. The tire blows up or whatever, right? Do you think that they would do a recall? And I think the answer is obviously I would do a recall. And so there is this bias, it seems to me, where we are sensitive to physical harm, right? But we're not sensitive to mental health harm. And so I think this sort of, we could think about it as a manifestation of how this society is still not there in terms of taking mental health as seriously as this. There's a lot of talk about mental health is important, and we need to make sure that we don't, and so on, and in the workplace it needs to be safe. But I think we're still at the lip service level. because I have no doubts, and I don't know what you think. I have no doubt if this were something that kids would choke on, or it would slip and fall, and there are 103,000 of them out there, they would definitely recall the products, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, right. What do you think? What do you think
Oh,
about that way of sort of getting folks to understand, that there is hypocrisy here, or there's lack of thorough thinking. They're not thinking through this thing completely.
I think that is the perfect analogy. It makes complete sense because you think about how many products are recalled for babies, child seats, infants, things like that, and because there was one incident. And here you have thousands of incidents where people are seeking, help from mental health professionals. So yes, but the problem here is, how do you get people to realize this, and how do you get people to see, okay, this isn't just a bunch of crazy moms that are overprotective, or this isn't just some ladies who are being overly sensitive. This is actually a real issue. It's just not one that many people would think about or address if their name isn't Alexa or they don't have a family member with a name. It's just, I mean, yeah, that's and the one thing I've said this many times, but what I know resonates with a lot of people and with myself is, my husband and I said, like, if we were to have named, so essentially the AI, the way that it is used, the way the voice technology is used is like, they call it an assistant, right? In my mind, it's more of a servant, right? Because you're demanding things from it. And the way you speak to that isn't typically in a soft, may I please have this? It's a, very commanding voice so that the technology works properly. And so we said, my husband and I we kind of joke, we're like, well, what if we had named our daughter Servant? What if we had done that? You can you imagine us on the 5 o'clock news, the Boston news station? We'd have it'd be everywhere because we were the crazy people who named our daughter Servant. But to us, essentially, that's been done for us. Now our daughter's name is synonymous with servant. And I know a lot of people feel that way, and a lot of women feel that way. And then unfortunately, people will take the liberty, especially in the workplace and with Zooms and everything now, it's gotten so much bigger, to make those jokes. And at first it is funny. Like you can take it for a little while, but when do you get to, imagine you're in that position and then you get to that point, like, okay, now it's not funny anymore. You have kids that are teenagers that literally can't handle this. It like actually can't handle this and have, thoughts of suicide. So the breaking point is, an issue.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about, how does one make progress in tackling this issue, right? I think what you guys, well, let's just make sure that the ask is crystallized, and then I can share with you some other thoughts. What is the ask what's the bottom line ask of Amazon specifically?
To change their wake word to a non-human name, and that includes branding and the wake word for voice technology.
Okay. To do away altogether, so nobody can ever say again, Alexa, get me some coffee?
Yes, absolutely. I don't see another solution from our perspective. And I think everyone in the group would agree with me on this. From our perspective, I don't see another solution because you could change the name, yes, but you're still going to have that problem. So really, I think, however the companies choose to get rid of these names, if they choose to do it and, phase it out, fine. But at the end of the day, yes, I think it needs to be completely gone.
And you don't want it to be like Amanda as opposed to Alexa?
No, no, I would never in a million years want anyone else to have to go through this. So no. And I think, this is another thought is that we've had is that what if it were Emily or Amy or Jennifer, Michael, John, very common names? Then I think you'd see a lot more noise. Alexa is a common name, but maybe not top 10. When we named our daughter, I think it was top 30 in the US, maybe not top 10. I think if it were Emma or Emily, you'd see a lot more people out there. You'd see a lot more voices. And I lost my train of thought of what I was going to say next.
No, or if it was Roger, right? There'll be outcry even more, because wait a minute. I mean, because men have more power and so on and so forth, right? They would, and their executives. So
Yeah.
what, in any case, so I think there is a lot going on here, right? In terms of a minority name, in terms of a female name, in terms of the servant aspect of it. Now I know that a lot of people who are probably listening and bumping into this issue for the first time, believe it or not, there are a lot of people who are just not who are completely unaware that this is an issue. And there's many things that happen in life, so I don't blame anyone. Um, right? I think probably they're like sympathizing with all this, but they're like, but it's very hard, for Amazon to do this, right? And my reaction to that is, let me ask you this: when GM has to recall 10 million cars, do we say, "Wow, maybe they shouldn't do it. It's too expensive. 10 million cars, right? If it's just $1,000 each, that's $10 billion, whatever the math is, right?" It never occurs to our head at all that they need to recall those cars, and the government is going to make sure it happens. So there's regulations and all that, and yet here, oh, it's going to be, when in fact it's not really that hard, to be honest with you. Technically it's not hard. In terms of rebranding, it's not that hard. Once the CEO decides, or whoever's in charge decides needs to happen, it will happen. So that's, I just wanted to sort of like poke at the folks who are watching and say, think about what you're accepting, right, in terms of damages, and recalls and all, when it comes to these cars and these devices. And how come all of a sudden you're becoming so concerned with the cost, for who? For the richest company in the globe by far, which, their valuation is a combination of the next five or six. So they have the cash, they have the manpower, they have the technology. And so, listener, right? If you are a moral and you have intellectual integrity, right? Can you please put this, square this circle for me and for Lauren, for all those folks out there? It's not that hard. People have done a lot harder things. Companies, number one. Number two, why being a hypocrite or being inconsistent in being concerned about physical health, but not mental health, right? So I want to leave these folks who are watching with um, some real things to wrestle with, as opposed to just tossing it up. Now there are people who are watching right now who are intellectually, I don't want to say idiots, right? Who are intellectually, they don't care, they don't have morality and all that, and those people don't care about it. The vast majority of people watching, they have integrity and they believe in right and wrong, and they want integrity means you are consistent in your moral outlook, right? If you care about people's health, there's mental health, there's physical health. Why you care about their physical health but not mental health? Number one. Number two, why are you concerned about the cost to a mega company when you were not concerned about the cost of big cars and all that? So there, right? Hopefully we'll get these folks to talk. I know I'm showing my bias here, but I just wanted to show to sort of
Yeah.
look at folks a little bit.
I love that. And you brought up another good point about it affecting minorities. We've thought about, okay, so they chose the name Alexa, right? Alexa, I mean, although it's a Greek name, it's a name of Greek origin. It's not really affiliated with one particular ethnicity or background, right? But the question in my mind is, had they chosen a name that was, no matter what it was, whether it's someone who is Hispanic, white, African American, whatever, whatever you want to choose, would that fly? And would that have flagged a thought in Amazon's office beforehand and said, no, that's going to offend this certain population?
Yep.
But I think Alexa kind of is almost a safety ring for them. Like, wait, this isn't going to hurt us because it's that name, which I think is a really interesting conversation.
Yeah, I don't think I was there, and I don't think there was any thinking whatsoever. So it's not like they thought if we called her Roberta or whatever, right? There wasn't thinking. That's the problem. The thinking didn't happen. It was just, okay, Alexa. Oh, we own the domain Alexa. Oh,
Yeah.
Alexa,
I do.
Lex is language, right? Lexicon, right? So it just made sense, and it's good in terms of. So I think that's how the decision was made. I don't think, and again, just to be fair to those folks, because we want to be fair, and they didn't know that this thing was going to go anywhere. They didn't think that it was going to be this big success. They thought it was going to be like, I don't know, one of their things, because they tried many things regarding speech before. They had the thing where you could go order something with the book and all that. It didn't go anywhere. So I don't think if they knew it was going to take off, they may have perhaps thought about it more. Um,
Mhm.
but be that as it may, I think the fact that they were innocent, let's say, in at the beginning, does not negate what they need to do now, which is the evidence is clear. People are asking you. It doesn't make sense for you to ignore. Well, let's talk about Amazon's response. Maybe just to be on the record, how they have you engaged with them? Have you contacted them? What have they said in response to your queries?
We have, yes. And I will start with, I personally don't fault Amazon at all. I really don't. Even Amazon Lab 126 that's responsible for naming it. I truly don't. And I don't think anyone else does. I mean, was it a big oversight? Yes. But do I think that they saw the ubiquity that was going to be? No, I don't. I don't. So I don't fault anyone. And to your point, it's more of a, okay, now we see it. What are we going to do now? And so, yes, we had reached out to Amazon through email directly to Jeff Bezos, and as well as other people within C-suite's administration. We've written letters, so they have had certified letters mailed to them. Also, I know many people have reached out through social media, and the only responses at this point that have been received, and that was probably 4 or 5 over the course of 2 years, were from tech support, and I would say a level up within tech support, whatever that is, the equivalent in within Amazon. Just basically saying we're sorry, that we're aware, and that's unfortunate. We had one parent reach out. This was a while back, but she had reached out, and the person from tech support offered her a toy for her daughter. So I'm going to make up an amount. I don't know if it was $10 or $50, but let's just say it was 25. They offered her a $25 voucher to Amazon to buy a toy. So, I'm not sure that the mom was thrilled with that response.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, so that's and there was also a written response to the BBC article, because we've been featured in quite a few places at this point, and I know there was a response to the BBC, and Amazon had responded, letting us know that they were saddened to hear of this. And then that was the end of it. So we haven't heard anything else
Yep.
after.
Yeah. No, I've read what they written, and it's interesting that they don't say we are sad about the situation. They say things like we're sad that certain people are behaving in a bad way, right?
Yes.
Right. So that's important to note that they're not taking any responsibility, because then, and I mean, they have lawyers, and those lawyers don't want anyone to introduce evidence that says, you see, you clearly admit that you are at fault, right? So they say things like, we are sad that people are abusing our thing. Well, we mean this thing to be good, and but some people are doing bad things with it. Never, we are sorry that we didn't think things through, or we're sorry that this thing is hurting people. Period. It's always somebody doing something with it that was not meant to be used in that way. And so one has to parse that. Those are very carefully written.
Yeah. It's like
um,
my kids when they're fighting. It's always someone else's fault. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. No, that's true. That's exactly right. Right. It's those people's fault. And it's not because they are petulant or whatever. It's because they are afraid of liability. And I think if they don't get their act together, I think they'll have to deal with that. That's my opinion anyway. Meaning, you know, somebody might sue them or whatever. And that would be totally, I'll be totally behind that, by the way, if you want to ask my opinion.
I will say that there's no lawsuit in progress currently. I'll say that, but and also I don't know anyone in this group of hundreds of people, or anyone that I've spoken with who has personally experienced these things, that is looking for money. I'm not suing for X amount, nor is anyone else. It's just simply for the name change. It's not, no one's trying to make money off of this. This isn't like, the McDonald's coffee fell in my lap and I want $4 million. That's not what this is at all. This is just a conversation about ethical practice and how do we right and wrong.